to the corrupt Bureau of Indian Affairs. That was a demand in 1970, and it is still a demand today. When will Native nations be free to govern themselves? And why has no one ever been prosecuted for the Bureau of Indian Affairs' outright theft of hundreds of millions of dollars in trust money? All too many of our people have been denied federal recognition. How dare the federal government sit in judgment of who is Native and who is not, measuring our blood quantum as though we were pedigreed dogs. Those who started National Day of Mourning in 1970 spoke of terrible racism and poverty. Well, racism is still alive and well. Our people are mired in the deepest poverty. Whether on or off the res, we still mostly lack decent health care, education, and housing. Our youth suicide rates, our rates of alcoholism continue to be the highest in the nation. And as the economy crumbles around us, these conditions only continue to worsen. Today, as we did in 1970, we mourn the loss of millions of our ancestors and the devastation of our beautiful land and water and air. We pray for our people who have died this past year, and I hope you will join me in grieving too for the immense suffering of our sisters and brothers in Afghanistan, in Palestine, in Iraq, and in so many other countries, human beings who suffer and face on a daily basis acts of terror. Human beings who are referred to this government as collateral damage. We remember all too well that our people throughout the Americas have for centuries been the collateral damage of the European invasion. We stand in solidarity with struggles around the world, from Occupy Wall Street and Occupy Boston to Egypt, from Haiti to the West Bank. Since the invasion of Columbus, Native people have been virtually non-stop victims of terrorism. The slaughter of the Pequots at Mystic, Connecticut in 1637. The U.S. military massacres of the peaceful Native people at Wounded Knee and Sand Creek, and so many, many other places, including the armed assault by the FBI on a federal encampment, or a peaceful encampment, at Pine Ridge in the 1970s. Those of us who were here in 1997 will not forget what happened to our peaceful march. When we see peaceful protesters at Occupy Oakland or Occupy Wall Street being kettled on a street, getting arrested and being pepper sprayed, well, we know all about this, because that is what happened here in November of 1997. But after almost a year of struggle, we were able to reach an agreement with the town of Plymouth. Part of that 1998 agreement called for the town to erect two plaques, one here on Coles Hill to honor National Day of Mourning, and another in Post Office Square to honor Metacom or King Philip. I am happy to say that finally there are two rocks in Plymouth that speak the truth. Today, we will correct some history and do so in a country that continues to glorify butchers such as Columbus, in a country that glorifies slave-owning presidents such as Washington and Jefferson, and even carves their faces into the sacred black hills of the Lakota. But we have a lot more to talk about than the Pilgrims or what happened in the 1600s. We will also be speaking today, as we have every year since 1970, about the conditions in Indian country today. We are here to unite people and to speak the truth. On our program will be only Native speakers. This is one day when we speak for ourselves without non-Native, so-called experts intervening to interpret and speak for us. Today, for a few hours, we are gathered here in liberated territory. Our very presence frees this land from the lies of the history books, the profiteers, and the myth makers. We will remember and honor all of our ancestors in struggle who went before us. We will speak truth to power. We will remember in particular all of our sisters and brothers who are imprisoned. In 1970, very few people would have given any thought to the fact that the indigenous people of this hemisphere do not look upon the arrival of the European invaders as a reason to give thanks. Today, many thousands stand with us in spirit as we commemorate our 42nd National Day of Mourning. Two of my children, Kimi Malasha and Wonsi Cook, recently organized their fellow classmates to present a petition at their school to have Columbus Day renamed Indigenous Peoples Day. They were successful. Needless to say, I'm very proud of the two of them. You know, I wonder where they get that from. Much always just said from her side. This kind of thing, though, is something that other youth and students and teachers can take on, educating about Columbus and making a choice not to participate in this holiday that glorifies the genocide of indigenous peoples, just as we are today choosing not to celebrate Thanksgiving. Sometimes we can make small changes and sometimes we can get together and make sweeping changes, but the important thing is we try to change things. To all of our beautiful Native youth, I say, remember what your ancestors went through to bring you here. And we are like the dirt, like the sand, like the tides. We shall endure. In the spirit of Crazy Horse, in the spirit of Metacom, and in the spirit of Geronimo, we are not vanishing. We are not conquered. We are as strong as ever. Ho!